Most people think top lawyers win because they talk better. Wrong, they don't talk more. They don't talk louder. They don't talk faster. They frame better. You argue facts, they argue perception. You try to prove you're right. They decide what right even means. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You lose arguments before you even open your mouth. Because you're fighting inside someone else's frame. I'm about to show you the exact cognitive system elite trial lawyers use. And by the end of this, you'll never walk into a disagreement unprepared again. Chapter 1. They control the frame before the facts. Most people think arguments are about evidence. Idiot. Evidence only matters inside a frame. In court, two lawyers can present the same facts. One wins. Why framing? Psychologist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated this with his famous experiment. If a medical treatment saves 90% of patients, people support it. If it kills 10% of patients, people resist it. Same data, different frame. Lawyers understand this instinctively. They don't ask, did my client break the rule? They ask, what story explains this behavior? Self-defense, misunderstanding, corporate negligence. The frame determines interpretation. You argue details, they define context. Want to apply this? Before any argument, ask, what is the core narrative? Not the facts, the story. Are you arguing about money or fairness? Are you arguing about deadlines or respect? Shift the narrative, shift the outcome. But here's the problem, though. Even framing fails if you react emotionally. Chapter 2. They slow the tempo. In argument, speed favors emotion. Emotion favors mistakes. Trial lawyers slow down. Deliberate pacing, measured tone, strategic pauses. Why? Because tempo equals authority. Research in social psychology shows that slower speech increases perceived credibility. Fast speech signals nervousness. You rush when challenged. You interrupt. You defend. Now you look reactive. Lawyers don't rush, they pause. Silence creates pressure. Silence makes the other side fill gaps. You talk to relieve tension. They stay quiet to create it. Try this in your next debate. Answer briefly, then stop. Let silence stretch. Watch how quickly the other person elaborates. Over-explaining is insecurity. Insecurity leaks weakness. But here's the thing, though. Silence only works if your thinking is structured. Chapter 3. They dismantle arguments with questions. Most people counterattack. You're wrong. Weak. Lawyers ask questions, precise ones. If that's true, how do you explain this? What evidence supports that claim? Can you clarify what you mean by that? Questions force cognitive load onto the opponent. Now they must justify. Under pressure, inconsistencies appear. Socratic questioning isn't new. It's ancient. But it works because it shifts burden of proof. You defend yourself. They make you defend yourself. Massive difference. In negotiation theory, this is called calibrated questioning. Chris Voss emphasizes it heavily. The person answering is thinking. The person asking is steering. You want leverage? Ask more. State less. But here's the brutal truth. Even great questions fail if you're arguing the wrong battle. Chapter 4. They choose battles strategically. You argue to win. Lawyers argue to win strategically. Sometimes they concede small points. Why? Because it builds credibility. If you fight everything, you look biased. If you concede intelligently, you look balanced. Cialdini's research on persuasion shows that perceived honesty increases influence. Admit a weakness, then pivot. Yes, that mistake happened. But here's what matters. Now you control direction. You treat arguments like ego contests. They treat them like chess. Sacrifice a pawn. Win the board. Think long-term, not immediate dominance. Hit subscribe before you forget that. We think strategically here. But here's the final advantage. The unfair one. Chapter 5. They detach identity from opinion. Most people fuse identity with belief. If someone attacks your idea, you feel attacked. So you defend emotionally. Lawyers detach. They can argue either side. Because it's not personal, it's structural. Psychologists call this cognitive flexibility. Ability to consider multiple perspectives without emotional collapse. You cling to being right. They prioritize winning outcome. Massive difference. When you detach, you can pivot. When you pivot, you adapt. When you adapt, you win. Try this. Before arguing, say internally, this is a position, not my identity. Instant reduction in emotional charge. More clarity, more control. Now recap. They control frame. Slow tempo, ask calibrated questions. Concede strategically, detach identity. You react emotionally. Rush speech, over-defend, fight every point, take disagreement personally. And then you wonder why you lose arguments. It's not intelligence, it's structure. But here's the problem, though. Even if you master argument strategy, if you can't control your own emotions under pressure, you'll sabotage yourself. That's why I made the next video breaking down how elite performers eliminate emotional reactions before they start. Because once you combine emotional control with strategic framing, it's almost unfair.